Hi, everyone. Welcome, and we will go ahead and get started. We'll turn it over to Audrey Ellis of T3 Advisor to kick it off.
All right, thank you everyone for joining us today. So glad to have you all here, and really looking forward to talking a little bit about the work that our colleagues Katie Dawson and Meredith King are going to share with you all about the AI-free AI microcredential that they've created for students and employees in the University of Louisiana System. This is part of a much broader body of work that we have been putting out for the last year and a half around AI and college completion. And so really thrilled to be able to share a case study of what we think is a really exciting practice. Today, we're going to hear a little bit about Complete College America and that body of work around AI. We'll dig into really listening from the experts. So Katie and Meredith are going to take it away for the majority of our time. And we have saved some time for questions and answers at the end of our session as well. So I would encourage you to please add any questions that you have into the chat. And we will be keeping tabs on those, but we will be trying to save the majority of questions for the end, though I might answer a couple on the side, depending on what the questions are like. So I wanted to go ahead and introduce our presenters. We are joined by Meredith King. Meredith is the Assistant Director for the Center for Teaching Innovation at the University of New Orleans, where she focuses on using pedagogical tools and design to rethink teaching and curriculum. She's collaborated with instructors nationwide to develop engaging, effective, and inclusive online courses with a special interest in generative AI and AI literacy. We're also joined by Dr. Katie Dawson, who is a higher education leader in the University of Louisiana System, where she drives innovation initiatives, including AI literacy, mental health programming, and technology integration. She has a strong focus on expanding digital opportunities and professional development, and she's successfully led system-wide projects that enhance student enrollment and faculty engagement across the UL system. I'll be here moderating the discussion. My name's Audrey Ellis. I work with Complete College America on lots of our AI work, and I'm the co-chair of CCA's Council on Equitable AI, and I'm thrilled to have you all here today. So I'm going to just hand it off to our colleague Charles Ansell briefly to introduce Complete College America and the AI body of work before we dig into hearing from our folks in Louisiana.
Thanks, Audrey. And I'll be pretty quick. I will share my screen. Or actually, you know what? I see that you've got it covered, so never mind. So yeah, I think folks know what Complete College America is, and as the name implies, we're all about increasing graduation rates, closing demographic gaps as we do so. And if we go to the next slide really quick. Actually, let's just go to the next one. I'm just going to quickly voice over a couple things. So we work through our alliance of states and systems, and actually, I'm proud to say that this slide's already out of date because very, very recently we've also had North Dakota and Kansas join the CCA Alliance, and they'll be having kickoff events shortly. But the way that we're able to get work done at scale and improve completion rates dramatically is working with colleges and universities directly, as well as seeing if there's system and state policy that can better enhance college completion in the students' lives. If we go to the next slide. So I'll just say really quick before turning it over to UNO. I want to emphasize that two things. So one is we have at the core of everything that we do a set of evidence-driven student success reforms, and those are our four pillars: purpose, structure, momentum, and support. And within all of those are recommendations that many folks I'm sure have already heard of, from co-requisite remediation to 15 to finish to caseload advising to purposeful first-year experiences, and on and on. We situate AI as solving those problems. It's not tech in and of itself, right? And I think that what you're about to hear from Katie and Meredith is such a strong example of that, of leveraging AI and its potential to directly do two things. One, promote a superior student experience, and then two, make sure that graduates are as ready as possible for a dramatically changing workforce. So really excited and grateful that they're able to join us. And the second thing is just at some point, if you want to go ahead and scan my QR code on the Zoom, we do have our annual convening coming up in Indianapolis. You should hurry up and register. There's, a ton of people already going. So I don't know if we're nearing capacity, but I wouldn't risk it too much longer if you're thinking about going. So with that, now I would like to go ahead and turn it over to our esteemed presenters.
Hi, everyone. I'm Meredith. You already got my introduction, so I won't bother with that. I just want to tell you a little bit about the University of New Orleans, just very, very briefly. Besides what you can read on the screen, I just want to situate where the University of New Orleans is, obviously physically within New Orleans, but that is the largest city in Louisiana, and we are the only public research university within the city. So the population that we serve is often reflective of the city in many ways, and where we sit within that larger landscape of colleges and universities in our city and in our state is very important to be able to give those particular students access to a research university in a way that they wouldn't have otherwise. Part of what the University of New Orleans is able to do is work with other universities in the University of Louisiana System, which we are part of, to expand what we can do and the offerings we can give. And I'll let Katie tell you about the system.
Hey everyone, I'm Katie, and I work at the University of Louisiana System, and UNO is one of the 9 institutions within our system. Our system is actually one of 4 university systems within our state, but we are the largest within our state, and we're actually, I believe, somewhere between the 14th and 16th largest university system in the US. And so between our 9 member institutions, which are made up of regional institutions, we have one Research One institution, we have our urban institution at UNO, and we also have an HBCU with Grambling State University. And so when we think about systemness and how to leverage the best parts of what's happening at each of those institutions, we think about programming. And Meredith has been a huge part of our programming for faculty and staff across our system on various topics, but really has done a lion's share of the work in spearheading the AI efforts that we're doing. And so, Audrey, if you'd like to migrate us to our next slide, we'll talk to you about how we recognized and responded to a need. And so, Meredith, you want to kind of talk about how you came? Yeah.
So how this journey started was that in late November of 2022, like many people in the field of education, I saw ChatGPT open up publicly and realized pretty quickly that this was going to be a huge change in the way that we were going to work, learn, think, exist in almost every part of how we interact as people. And of course, for me, I think about what that means in terms of education. I think about what that means in terms of initially faculty and staff and how they're teaching students, because I sit on the faculty and staff end of things working with faculty. So that's usually where my brain goes first. And so I wanted to start to think about how we could expand learning for our population, our community, both being at the University of New Orleans and then also, again, larger in the University of Louisiana System, how we can get those people prepared for using this, both faculty and staff, excuse me, both faculty and staff as teachers or practitioners. And then really, as we kept thinking about this more and more, how we could prepare students for the future. We know that this is going to be a huge part of the future of work. What is it that we can be doing to help our students evolve and think about that? And then there were these other needs that we had too, like Katie mentioned. I really love being able to collaborate with the UL system. It has been so fruitful to have people who are in similar positions or slightly different positions help think around problems that aren't just happening at my university, that are happening across the state in all of our universities. So I wanted to be able to make this inclusive and think about what we were doing at a larger idea for all of our systems. And then we know that people are sick of hearing it, but there's an enrollment cliff, that adult learners is a growing population, and things like micro-credentialing are ways to really be able to get those people involved and start to pull them in and demonstrate a higher value. So when you combine all of those pieces, and I think we can go to the next slide. Yeah, so when you combine all those pieces, what you get is the need for AI literacy. And a micro-credential for AI literacy, which is what we came to. And the reason that we wanted to focus on AI literacy rather than AI programming is that's what most people are going to use. It is all well and good for you to be able to build a large language model. More power to you if you can. I cannot. I don't have those skills. But daily, I can use something like ChatGPT or Gemini or Grammarly to help with my work or change the way that I'm thinking about something or work as a tutor with me. I can do all of those things if I have AI literacy. This is going to be a thing that is shown in almost every sector of the workforce. You can see here the statistics that 88% of employees in a recent survey believe colleges should be training students to work to use AI in the workforce. I have a bunch of other statistics that are very, very similar in that number in terms of how many people are, in terms of what employers are looking for and how they are expecting people to come out of college ready to do this. And the thing that I am constantly saying, and those of you who, I think there are a few of you in here who know me in real life, and so you've probably heard me say this before, but I am saying all the time, we can't predict very far out with AI. It's changing too quickly. But what we can do is at least short term take some very good guesses. And short term, AI probably isn't going to replace humans short term. Again, I can't predict further out than that. But what is going to happen is that people who can use AI will replace people who can't.
Yep.
As jobs change and shift, whatever it is that those jobs are changing into are going to require AI to use them. And if we can have some graduates who know how to use AI on top of all of the other wonderful skills that they are getting from our system universities, then we are giving them a leg up. We are giving them something that is extra that we can do for them, that is something that other people at other universities don't necessarily have, that is preparing them in a special and unique way. Katie?
I completely agree. And Audrey, if you want to shift us to the next slide. So we decided to start from a place of literacy. And it was kind of funny when we first started talking to Audrey about the potential of having this webinar. She was like, all right, so like, how did you approach this? And like Meredith and I just kind of like side glanced each other on the Zoom because like we're incredibly academic about everything. And the first thing that we wanted to do was research and understand. And through that experience, what we figured out is that literacy is the foundation for the start of everything. You have digital literacy skills, you have financial literacy skills, you have media literacy, you have information literacy. Well, what we need is a foundation, but more so just a foundation for us. We also need to be able to give this foundation to our students. And so thank you, Audrey, for borrowing from Digital Promise. We're big fans, and we absolutely believe in their AI literacy framework. And so that's not necessarily the crux of where we started, but we did find it very interesting when we stumbled across the framework in our research, how glad we were that other people were thinking about it the same way that we were. And so Meredith, do you want to kind of walk us through that intertwining AI literacy framework?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're thinking about AA literacy, and there are several frameworks out there, I like this one in particular because of the way it really does show that all of these pieces are feedback loops that feed into each other. You have to be able to understand what you are using. And again, that doesn't mean that you need to know how to program. That means that you need to understand the basics of what this tool is and isn't, what it does, some background on the ideas of how this works, some of how modeling works and what it is going to be able to give you, and what it's not. So understanding those pieces. You need to be able to evaluate. That doesn't just mean evaluating the output of some sort of chatbot or prompting. That also means evaluating whether this is a tool that you should use. There's an ethics component that you'll hear us talk about a lot. So that's evaluating on all of those pieces. And then obviously you have to be able to use this efficiently. And then as you use it, be able to think about it, understand it, evaluate that use. That is where like the prompt engineering side of this comes in, and think about those pieces holistically, because AI literacy is not just learning to do prompt engineering and get a good response. It is also understanding those ethical pieces, that basic foundational knowledge, so that you know what you're doing and can keep in focus your own human cognition and your own human abilities as you use this tool for whatever it is that you're using it for.
So Audrey, if you go to our next slide, please. This is a quote from me, and it basically acknowledges that we're already having industry leaders turn to us and say, hey, who do you have that can come in here and that has the foundational knowledge to start running with the AI initiatives that we're implementing? Or if they don't have the foundational knowledge that we need, they're at least ready, willing, and able to grasp on and hold tight as we're revolutionizing what we do in our industry with AI. And so next slide, please. We really started talking about artificial intelligence in our system 2 years ago. Again, Meredith was the lead. She gave a wonderful presentation at our system conference, kind of talking about her own use of ChatGPT and the way that she saw it revolutionizing not only classroom spaces, but also personal workspaces. And so last spring of 2023, we have a small group of faculty and staff from across our system who come together on a weekly basis to kind of talk about not only AI, but anything and everything innovation-wise in higher ed. And so that small group, between all of us, we were just exploring and we were asking those big questions. What does this mean? How do we start? Is it ethical? What happens when, you know, we face people on our campuses who say using these tools are going to put people like us out of work? Like, what is the conversation? Where do we start? And so we started with just conversations, and we recorded them just like we're recording this webinar. And you all can access them on our UL System YouTube page. But we very thoughtfully were talking about all of the things that we've been facing over the last year and a half, and having those conversations honestly and early, I think allowed us to be in a space to think critically about what kind of value add we could have to give students. We settled on a microcredential because honestly, microcredentialing is awesome. It is absolutely something that we see becoming a part of the higher education landscape in general. It's never going to, in our opinion, my opinion, replace having a degree. A degree is an artifact of value. But the microcredential does give you that little dopamine of like giving you something for what you're learning. And so we thought curriculum at first, but if you guys work in higher education, you know that editing a curriculum can be lengthy and hard. And by the time we actually got it through a curriculum committee to be developed and to be offered, we could be 3 to 5 years ahead and someone else could be doing it. And what would happen to those students who didn't get that information? And so we decided the microcredential was the route for us. We also thought very critically about making sure that we were creating something that focused on student experience. So much of what we've seen over the last year and a half has had a focus on what faculty and staff need to know about AI, but not so much what students need to know about AI. However, we also acknowledged that giving our students the tools without giving those same opportunities for those tools to our faculty and staff would be a disservice. And so at the end of the development of the microcredential in June, we decided to pilot the microcredential for faculty and staff across our system. And so one small little email was sent out to each campus to let them know that this was an opportunity in the middle of July. And we were very surprised, pleasantly, to have almost 400 participants sign up within this small 3-week period that we were offering this opportunity. And that gave us enough feedback to improve the use of the credential. And Meredith will talk a little bit more about our findings from that pilot. But now we're thinking towards a system-wide rollout. And so our hope is that by the middle of the fall semester, each institution will have this microcredential embedded in their LMS of choice, and that students will be openly enrolled into the course and able to interact with this as they would like. Additionally, we're incorporating into our rollout a playbook, if you will. So we very much believe in the power of academic freedom and the creativity and innovation of our faculty and staff around system. But we also know that not all the time can you find that. And so just an idea book. How can this be used? How can you use it in the classroom? What are some assignments that could be created? What is some collaboration that could happen? And how can that happen at every level? So thinking undergraduate through graduate level coursework about how this AI literacy microcredential could fit. Next slide, please. So the first component, we wanted it to be free. It needed to be something that cost was not prohibitive of access. We wanted it to be a value add, not necessarily somebody had to find out about to get access to. And so that's part of the reason that we're thinking through how we can enroll all of our students into the LMS shell that the credential is housed in. We had to think thoughtfully about making sure it was compatible. So our system uses 2 different learning management systems. We use both Moodle and Canvas. And so we wanted to create a credential that could be shared between the 2. They have very similar features, but different use cases. So that was something to think through. Meredith, you want to talk about the design?
Yeah, I can talk some about the design of it. So when we were thinking about this, we wanted, again, for it to be a value add. It's not supposed to be a course in itself. It's supposed to be a micro-credential. We wanted it to, like Katie was saying, to be something that could be built in or rolled in with other coursework or used in different ways, in the ways that universities wanted it to be. And so part of that is making sure that it's a manageable time frame. So we did not want it to be more than about 16 hours. We tried to come up with something that people could do if they really wanted to in a weekend. And obviously they could spread it out however long they want to do. It is self-paced, which is the next piece of this, right? So you can do it whatever length you want, but we wanted to make sure that our best recommendation would be if you just went in and you got it done, it shouldn't take you more than 16 hours. That really was a big focus, as was that self-paced piece. Everything there is auto feedback, as are many micro-credentials. There's not somebody who's going to be watching this. There's not a course. I will tell you, a lot of that is funding based. There's not somebody whose job it is to do this. We were funded through a small grant and then a lot of love. There's a lot of labor of love in it, but there's not someone whose job it is to give feedback like a class who is being paid for that. So everything is self-paced and has auto feedback. One of the huge things that we wanted was for it to be as tool agnostic as possible. And what we mean by that is that we don't want it to favor one AI platform over another. It does me no good to explain to you how to really, really work something like Google Bard when we were first looking at this, and then have the name change and the way that it works change, and maybe the URL that you go to change. And AI changes so quickly, you cannot stay relevant on that stuff. You can't if you're creating something like this. So we wanted to focus on those larger concepts, the conceptual pieces, and make it tool agnostic so that our students would be learning those bigger ideas and be able to apply those to any tool they come across. Again, on that value add, we wanted to make sure that they're taking something away from this. Yes, it could be something that they're doing as part of their coursework, but what can we do to show those employers that we've been talking about that our students have something that they want, that we demonstrably know that they want, which is AI literacy skills and AI skills. And what we came up with was a badge. So completers will earn a badge that they can share on LinkedIn or whatever job site or their website or wherever it is that shows that they have been certified by this micro-credential in specifically AI literacy. Again, no one is saying that they are programmers, but they are AI literate, which goes a long way. And you'll hear us talk about this over and over again. I already mentioned it before, and you'll hear us talk about it again. We really wanted to put ethics at the forefront of this. We want students to know what they're getting into before they touch one of the tools. We want students to have a conception of the enormity of what this change is and what this can do before they think of things on a micro level of how they are using it, that macro view of those ethical issues. And they are numerous, and everyone falls in somewhere in a different scale on them. But if our students aren't thinking about those first, they are not using this tool properly, and they are not going to be gaining everything they can from the use. So we absolutely wanted to keep ethical consideration at the forefront of everything that we were doing. And then Katie, you want to take that last one?
Yeah, and finally, we wanted it to be something that people could opt into. So we don't want to force anything down anyone's throat. We don't want anyone to be forced to be uncomfortable or to use a tool that they're just not ready to use. It may not be a stubbornness of not wanting to. It may just be the bandwidth. If you're taking 18 to 21 hours in a semester, you may not be able to be forced to add 16 more hours into your work schedule to complete another micro-credential. And so it was really important to us that students have the ability to access this when they want it, but also we're really excited to see the ways that our institutions end up using this credential across institution. And so making sure that it was free, but also making sure that it was accessible and not forced were pretty big components. Audrey, would you mind going to the next slide? Thank you. This is brilliant, guys. The way that this team thought about introducing the concept of AI and all of its components was just magical. Meredith, will you tell us what we're looking at and how we would navigate through the credential based on these 5 topics?
Absolutely. I'll run us through that really quickly. So I want to point out by showing you that if you look at using AI, actually using the tool, that doesn't come till Unit 5. That thing that I was saying about keeping ethics first, that's not just a theory, that's practice for us. We don't want people touching these things till they understand how to use them conceptually, not just physically. And for us, what that meant was, one, situating what AI literacy is in a larger contextual framework. So that's not just saying, here's what AI is, though we do that. Here's some of what AI literacy is, though we do that. That's also contextualizing technology anxiety throughout history and letting people know that big changes in technology come with anxiety, come with big ethical questions, are not easy shifts. So we really wanted to give those foundational definitions and situate it in the context. Then the next unit that you would get to after that is ethics. That's not just classroom ethics, though we do go over that, because that's really variable and faculty are going to change that. So what we can tell students is check with your faculty. Here are general ethics to use for that. But what we can give them on top of classroom ethics is larger ethical considerations, whether that is bias or environmental concerns or humans in the loop concerns. We can give them an ethical framework to help them think about AI. I don't know whether they've thought about it, even if they've used it, which most people have used it, whether they realize it or not. They've used some sort of generative AI. Have they thought ethically about this? I want to make sure that they are taken through that before they get to putting hands on the tool. And then we separated out digital literacy and data privacy from ethics. Lots of things we've seen sort of roll those into one. And we really wanted to make sure to take the time to not have to put those together because data privacy is a huge issue here. Signing up for any online tool comes with data privacy risks, as we all know. Putting information into generative AI and not understanding how it is using that in modeling, not understanding what it says in its terms of service, because you don't know what a terms of service is scary to me. And I cannot have our students become good, responsible AI users without having them stop and think about this. There's no way for them to really understand that without understanding digital literacy, which many of our students are probably not getting. So we wanted to give them a quick background in digital literacy and really focus on that data privacy. Once they have done all that, once they have situated it in historical context and gotten some basic definitions and thought about ethics and understood data privacy, then we can tell them, okay, here's how you do prompt engineering. We created our own framework called the crafted frameworks, crafted with 2 A's, to help them understand how to do prompt engineering. And we take them through a series of exercises, again, being as tool agnostic as we can in those. And we really want them to think about prompt engineering, co-thinking, co-creating, and using this as an iterative process to, again, keep human in the loop and use your own brain and how you can co-think and co-create and work with doing, repeating until you get product that you want. And that's really the practice end of this. And then we didn't want to stop there. Knowing that they're going to have to use this in the future, whether they want to or not, they will have to. It will happen. What can we do to help them think about that future of AI? What can we do to really help them think about the future of work? And we see work not just as career, but as creative work, as personal work. What can it be doing to help them think about that expansively into the future? Career focused for a lot of it, because these are students, but also personally, because that's part of what we're doing at universities too, is helping them grow as people and think as people. And then a final assessment, just to make sure that you can earn a badge. Each one of these does have an assessment with it, and then a big final assessment that takes about an hour to receive a badge. Next slide. So these are our learning outcomes. You can see they are very much based in what I was talking about. We want them to be able to identify basic concepts and development in technology and generative AI. We want them to be able to analyze generative AI regarding ethics, digital literacy, data privacy, and the future of work. We want them to be able to evaluate the value and quality of generative AI applications. And again, that's what I was saying in terms of creative, business, and educational, right? There's a larger thing than just use this for work or use this to help you write a paper. And we want them to be able to then articulate those things, those pieces that make up AI literacy. And we want them to be able to think about that as a student, as a digital citizen, and as a professional. Move on to the next slide.
So there were 2 major considerations when we thought about this work. And the first, obviously, is ethics. Again, because we started this with conversations, general conversations, what are we talking about? What can this do? What does this mean for us? We also were able to very quickly identify amongst our innovator group, but also separately, those things that were going to give people pause in moving forward with exploring or using AI. And so we knew that if we could address the ethical components first, that our faculty and staff who were more hesitant of leaning into artificial intelligence would feel a little bit more comfortable doing so if there were some guide rails, if you will. And then secondly, we really wanted to think about making sure that this was future-proofed. As Meredith shared, we were able to get a very small grant from our Louisiana Board of Regents to help with the development of the AI microcredential. But we're not going to continue to be able to pay people to update this credential as we go. And so, Meredith, can you kind of talk through the ways that you guys designed this to be a little bit more future-proof?
Sure. There is no such thing as absolute future proofing, right? Some of the stuff that we've built in there about the way that AI has developed and works and the way that large language models run right now, all of that's based in right now. So there's no actual future proofing that can be done, but you can take your best stab at it. And the way that you can do that is, like we'd said, being tool agnostic. I'm never telling someone go hop on ChatGPT. I'm saying pick the generative chatbot of your choice. Just basic things like that, where you cannot, as much as you can come up with conceptual things rather than name drop, you're going to be doing a better job. We tried to do that as much as possible. That also helps us put the emphasis on two key parts that are not just reflective of what we want our students to be doing, but also reflective of what research says employers want from their employees. And those things are critical thinking and metacognition, right? So employers want people who are good critical thinkers. AI levels the playing field in a way where the outcome, the product, winds up being relatively stable across all users. It has leveled the playing field in that way. So then what differentiates people who know how to use AI well? They are thinking about their use of AI. They understand how to do critical thought. And a key part of critical thought is being able to stop and think about your own learning and your own thinking, and think of your own brain as an iterative process, the same way you would be thinking about prompting an AI and using that co-thinking with it to develop your own brain and your own thought and your own processes. And that was so essential to us because it is reflective of learning in any situation. And it is reflective of what, like I said, jobs want, what employers are looking for as a differentiating skill. So anything that we can be doing to tell our students that's the differentiating skill and then help them do it is what we wanted to do. I think you can move on to the next slide.
So we want this credential, again, to be a value add. I'm hopeful enough that maybe in the next year or 2 years, it becomes something that differentiates us from some of our counterparts. If you come to us, you also get this extra thing. To me, it's always about what's the extra thing that we can do. And it's not just to add another thing, it has to be a value, but it's also, to me, setting up the foundation for what we in higher education really want, which is lifelong learners. We want our students to not only come to us and experience this micro-credential and be successful in earning this micro-credential, but earning their degree, and then coming back to us for continued learning and for further degrees. And so if you'll move to the next slide, we can kind of share how we thought about how this type of format, a micro-credentialing format, would engage and maybe enhance the experience of our lifelong adult learners. And so, of course, with it being something that could be completed within 16 hours, that format offers flexibility and more focused learning. We wanted it to be something that people could pick up and put down, like a good book. Sometimes you just get to something and you just need to noodle on it a little bit longer. And so that self-paced structure really accommodates that busy schedule or that opportunity to dwell on something that you really just want to understand a little bit more. We really wanted to make sure that the work was tied to the future of work. So I love learning for the sake of learning, and like you can throw me down any rabbit hole and I'll find something to hold on to, but I know that I am not norm. You have to make learning personalized. And so by tying this content clearly to the own learner's future of work or even personal use, that's going to create that buy-in. And again, hopefully create that thought of, hey, this is a really cool way to be guided through information and keep them coming back for more. Obviously, making this credential free eliminated the financial barrier. And to be honest with you, in Louisiana, that's some of the biggest barriers that our students face, are overcoming those financial barriers and building a new pipeline of learners and enrollments. Meredith said it at the beginning of the webinar. You've probably read it 4 other places just on this Monday, but the enrollment cliff is a real thing. And so I think we just need to think creatively about how to engage lots of types of learners, not just those that are 18 to 24. Next slide, please. So looking ahead, and I love this slide, honestly. Audrey did our slide. She's amazing. You should hire her. But the thing that I love about it is that looking to keep students at the core, bringing something to scale, exploring partnerships, and staying flexible is really kind of the framework that we use when we're exploring any innovative topic. But specifically with the attention to AI, again, what are we doing if we're not doing it for student success? That's why we're here. When we're thinking about bringing it to scale, it's not just how do we get these amazing ideas in the hands of the people that are going to use them. It's also how do we create something that's going to be sustainable and that will be able to continue even if there isn't a Meredith or a Katie at the helm. We are very big on exploring partnerships and opportunities to collaborate, be that among departments within our institutions, within our system, within higher education as a whole, either state or nationally, or even within industry and nonprofit. We're always on the hunt for people who think creatively like we do and can bring resources to the table that maybe we can't. And then thinking about staying flexible. We get ourselves into really hard places to get out of when we build concrete things. And so inevitably, we know that our micro-credential is going to have to evolve. The learners are going to evolve. The display of information may even evolve. And so just thinking about future-proofing and how do you give substance when you can't predict what the outcome is going to be? And honestly, isn't that what we're all doing with AI anyways? Meredith, you want to add?
I mean, I think you have covered all of those pieces really, really well. We're just looking, the thing that I keep thinking about is this first piece of keeping students at the core. We wanted to run our pilot that we ran with faculty and staff because those are the people who know our students. I didn't want our students running through something and then getting a credential or getting information if we hadn't thought about how we were going to validate that, whether people were going to get that information and receive it and understand it. And so we thought about who do we have who can help us stress test this. And the answer was we have people who work at a system of 9 universities who are the people who are going to be helping us impart this wisdom to students. I think a lot about the fact that faculty are not trained in AI literacy and in teaching literacy, nor should they be. They are subject matter experts in something else. I am a subject matter expert in AI literacy, and I can give that to our students directly, helping our faculty evolve and think through that, rather than asking them to synthesize new information and add to their ever-growing list of things that they have to do. So we had an amazing group come for this pilot. Like Katie said, almost 400 people from across our system, and that's faculty and staff, came, worked on this pilot. I can tell you that includes at least one university president. Shout out to the president of UNO who took our micro-credential and loved it. Thank you, Dr. Kathy Johnson. We really appreciate your support. So that was a wide variety. That was staff members to presidents, right? That were in here taking this and seeing whether this information, one, was presented in a useful way, two, taught them anything, reflected what they were understanding or had not understood. There were people who took this who were computer science professors who have a great understanding of AI. There were people who took this who are administrative assistants who are looking to up their game, everything between there. I can tell you that the feedback that we got was overwhelmingly positive. Almost all of the feedback that we got that was stuff to change was technical stuff within the learning management system or navigational problems, or let's be real, there's always like that one or two things that spell check didn't catch that is a little mistake or a little programming error. Things like that happen. Content wise, I don't think we got more than one or two comments that were largely from people who were more technically skilled, asking if this could be more technical, which of course it can't, because we need it to be at every level, and AI literacy is not about learning computer science, it is about learning AI literacy. So we got a few of those, but overwhelmingly positive comments asking when they can give this to students and telling us how essential this was and how much this work was. We already have at least 3 professors who are begging us to put this into their classes this semester, and we're getting this there as soon as we can. People who took the credential and just want it for their students so badly because they see the value. So keeping students at the core while being able to run this pilot and make sure that we weren't going to be giving something to students that wasn't of value to them. And so that when we do put it into those learning management systems and it can be given to them, that they know that what they're getting is quality and that what they are getting is something useful for the future, and that people at this system who are not students have seen that value as well. And I think we're probably at question time.
Yeah.
I think we're...
That's actually a great transition, Meredith, to a question that we have in the Q&A about value and evaluating. So one of the questions from Trisha is, how did you evaluate the value of your micro-credential program? Are you partnering with industry experts who are signing off and legitimizing the program?
So we have found that I believe we've articulated the value with the feedback that we've received from the faculty and staff from across our system. So one of the things, and there are many things, like y'all, we could have a whole separate hour-and-a-half conversation about what we've learned. But one of the things that really stood out to us is that we had users of AI from novice to very experienced take part in the pilot. And the resounding sound from those that were experienced was, this was so well thought out. It works out perfectly. In fact, we had a few of our users move on and take the Coursera free higher ed leadership AI course. And they were like, wow, like your credential gave me the foundation that I needed to be successful in their credential. So we're taking that as a sign that it's pretty positive. The other thing, Trisha, is that we've actually had a couple of industry partners who are clamoring to be more involved with this and to have access to this. We have friends at Top Hat and Coursera, and they're looking to see how we're rolling it out and how it could be leveraged other places. And then we're also looking kind of internally at our state as to how we potentially could share this with our other sister systems. It's a lot of S's. in the future as well, like maybe even as early as this spring, to allow them to roll it out. I hope that answers your question. Meredith, what would you add?
What I would add also is that this is research based. When it comes to AI literacy, there are not a ton of people who are out there saying, oh, yes, I am the expert in student-based AI literacy, because this is a really new field. So a lot of what we did is take as much good research as any people who work in academia. And let me tell you, nine people on the team. A little bit more because there's some that have more than one person from an institution, but yeah, there was at least one representative from each of our schools on there in varying fields, computer science to education to communication. We thought about who could bring their expertise to this, what research would be able to be put into that. And we did, like any good academics do, a ton of research on what these best practices were, what people are looking for in the industry, how does one go about prompt engineering, and remembering that all of these, again, are pretty new fields, especially as they relate to students. People have been working in artificial intelligence and computer science for over half a century. That's not new. Generative AI and public use of generative AI and how to get that information to people, that's the new field. So when you're asking, are we talking to experts? Yes and no. There are people who are in industry who want this, but also there are just not a ton of people who have done this or have good research to test this. So that's part of why we wanted to pilot it and give this to our students early, is so that they can become those leaders and those experts.
That's great. And I wanted to ask another question from the Q&A, Meredith and Katie. Could you talk a little bit about how institutions in the UL system might be able to customize the content in the course? Trisha, again, thank you for asking questions. Trisha is curious about how the ethics section in particular might differ between institutions and how, like, what the flexibility might be to do that customization.
So
So
you've got amazing questions. And if you don't have anything to do on Monday afternoons, drop me a note and you can join our innovators group.
absolutely. Can I take this one a little bit, and then
Yeah.
I'm sure Katie will have way more to add, because I think we're going to come at this from different angles, knowing the two of us. What I'm wondering is, if when you say ethics, if you are thinking about things like academic integrity and different academic integrity policies versus larger ethics, because those larger ethics pieces are not going to change institution to institution. It is not going to change institution to institution whether large language models have bias. It is not going to change institution to institution whether we should be thinking about humans in the loop versus humans out of the loop, or where environmental concerns come into this. That stuff doesn't change institution to institution. If you're talking about the ethics of within a classroom, again, we are trying to be as agnostic as possible. So we don't have anything in there that says, this is how you will use it in a class. We have a lot of stuff that says, you may run across faculty, professors who say, don't use it. And here's some thoughts about why. You may run across people who say use it, and when you're doing that, remember all these other ethical considerations that we talked to you about. We wanted to give them all of that. So ethics are not going to change institution to institution, even if policy does, and we're not addressing policy. And Katie, I'm sure you'll have a different take on it.
Yeah, actually, surprise, surprise. My thought was, Trisha, that you were asking about how are people going to be able to take the information from within the micro-credential and embed it into their courses, and how will we control what they used from the credential and how they used it. So that's a great question. And we spent a lot of time thinking about that. And so we have come to the conclusion that we are not allowing our faculty and staff to take resources from the credential. We would like for our faculty and staff to encourage students to complete the credential in the open course that they'll all have access and be enrolled in, and then show their badges to their faculty member as proof of completion. We've also, again, that playbook was pretty key to kind of sorting out those issues. We also encourage the instructor to encourage students to go through the course chronologically. So if you are in a doctoral level course and you are depending on Unit 5 because you want your doctoral level students to be thinking about how they are going to be critically using this in their careers, that is wonderful, but we want them to get modules 1 through 4 before they even get to module 5 to be able to show you the badge, to tell them how they're going to be using AI in their careers. And so that playbook has ideas, like it points back to where in the credential you can find resources, and it goes module by module. So it talks about if you're looking for an undergraduate language arts class, you might consider assignments like these. If you're looking at a upper level computer science course, you might consider using this module and these types of prompts. And so we really try to point you where you might find the information within the credential, but we don't want you taking it out of the context that we built it in, because that context is so important.
Thank you, Katie and Meredith. And Trisha says she lives in New Orleans, so she can even visit for those sessions. And you're right, Meredith, that she was asking about policies, but Katie, that's such an interesting twist. And I think just speaks to how ubiquitous the conversation is around AI and AI literacy. There's so many different shades and dimensions to the conversation that you can say the word ethics and it could mean 20 different things. And so I love that just real life example of AI literacy that you just showed for us, and how you were interpreting Trisha's question. So we have just a couple of minutes left. If anyone else has any other questions, I'd encourage you to put them in the chat. But I also just want to say that we will be sharing out the link to the recording and follow-up, and we'll include it on CCA's website along with our other AI resources. So we have 2 publications that we released last fall: Attainment with AI, which we consider to be a different but playbook, not the playbook that Katie was talking about, but this includes 170 use cases for practitioners on the ground in any type of hat that they might wear at an institution. So we convened a working group to brainstorm, any possible use case that you could imagine, trying to shift away from thinking about academic integrity and asking ourselves, what are the opportunities with AI? And how might individuals use AI in different aspects of their role? We also have our AI Divide position paper, which is a brief paper that outlines kind of the call to action for our Council on Equitable AI. So I would definitely encourage you to check those out. And just a plug that we're about to release another publication around AI adoption at institutions, and talking about different AI competencies that institutions can think about developing as an institution, not as an individual. So I hope that you all will stay tuned for that resource as well. I'm going to just see Charles or Kate if you have anything else you want to add. Otherwise, and it looks like Charles is coming back online.
I mean, I just thought that this was great. I mean, I knew a little bit about the program, but in preparing for this, but I think it's fantastic, and I hope that folks on the call can see if there's ways to replicate this in your college system, university, or or unpack the policy implications of it, or even just like go to the course itself. So I think it's really cool. That's all.
Awesome. So we'll be highlighting more institutional practices like this practice from UNO and UL system across the next several months, and at the annual convening too. So if you haven't had a chance to register for that, we hope to see you there. And otherwise, thank you so much for joining. And Meredith and Katie, really appreciate your time. And we stuck to our time goal with time for Q&A. So I'll call that a win for Monday. Thank you, everyone. I hope that you'll have a great afternoon.